is to give you a position to fall back to a known point. So if you are going along and you're taking indirect fire and you want to fall back, you fall back to that rally point, which everyone will know what it is. And we'll talk about those when we're setting them down and the important elements of those. An ORP is an objective rally point, and that's what you set up. It's the last known point before you go to your objective. And like I said, we'll talk about that more too during the battle drill. And all of this, you guys were all here last year, right? You guys have done Styx lanes, and how many of you went to LTC? 3. Okay, so you guys did Styx lanes there as well. So FOOM T2 is something that we talk about here at GRU, and it's just a way of reminding ourselves what we brief. So the F stands for formation, the OOM is order of march, and the T2 is traveling technique. So your formation is how you're lining up before you move out. So we usually use a squad column, fire team wedge. And what that means is that your squad is lined up in a column, so one team in front of the other. And then the fire team wedge, Alpha team is a fire team, Bravo team is a fire team, and each of them is in a wedge. But together they make up a column. So that, and you're usually in the middle. So that's a squad column fire team wedge. So that's the formation. The order of march or the order of movement is Alpha team to my front, Bravo team to my rear, with myself in the middle for command and control. There is nowhere in doctrine does it say that you have to put Alpha team first. You can very well put Bravo team first. However, we try to kind of keep it on the same page here. It just helps us. It's part of our SOP, and you'll find that when you get out on the lanes, if you're doing the same things that he is, that she is, that she is, and it's just going to make it roll a little bit more smoothly. I mean, that's probably going to change when you have to work with people who aren't from our school, but it gives you a basis so that you know how to do something because you've done it the same way so many times. SEALS, SLLS, stands for stop, look, listen, and smell. We're going to teach you guys to do a SEALS halt every time when you begin a battle drill. In reality, you would do it whenever there's a change in terrain. And the purpose of a SEALS halt is to acclimate yourself to the new environment. So say your Alpha was on the top of the hill, and when you go down, you're going to the bottom of the hill, and that's where you're going to start. Well, it's different there. You know, the air is different, everything. So you're just kind of looking around and getting acclimated. And what you're listening for and smelling for is you might be able to see signs of the enemy. So you might be able to smell cigarette smoke or something and know that there was someone there. You know, you may hear people talking. So that's the purpose of that. Like I said, we don't change terrain a lot in our lanes, but it's still good to incorporate it and to get in the habit of doing it. You do that about 50 to 100 meters past the LD. The Alpha is the assembly area, right? And that's just where you start out. That's where you're doing your rehearsals. That's where you're issuing your op order before you cross the LD. TLPs are troop leading procedures. All right. And you're always going to follow those. It's the 8 steps of TLPs. If you stick to those, sometimes some of them kind of get out of order, but if you're doing all that, then you're doing all the things that you need to do to accomplish your mission. So it's always a good place to start. And that's for everything. That's not just for Styx lanes. That's for, you know, when you're an officer and you're trying to get something done, it's still all those same steps. They're troop leading procedures. PIRs are priority intelligence reports. What those are is for what you're going to see them for here on a Styx lane. PIRs is what you're looking for usually when you search for EPW. And those become really important when you start talking about big army, because you're like, okay, great, I found this piece of information on this EPW at my squad level. It probably doesn't mean anything. But you report it up to the platoon level. And at the platoon level, they're not just seeing what you pulled from your squad, they're seeing what all 4 squads pulled. And then they're putting it together and getting a bigger picture. And then they pass that up to the company level. And they've got an even bigger picture, up to battalion, up to brigade, up to division. And so all of a sudden you have this entire intelligence scheme for the battlefield. So it is very important. That's why they're called priority. You might hear them called CCIRs, which is Commander's Critical Information Reports. So pay attention to that in the op orders and know that it's something that has value. Right? LDA is a linear danger area. It's typically like a road, like on a point ambush. Is going to take place typically on a road. So we'll also talk about crossing LDAs. We probably won't do that today because we'll probably get that in the lab. There's a lot of different ways to cross an LDA. A lot of ways to skin that cat. You gotta find what works for you. You guys will probably come up with SOPs as MS3s that you guys like crossing an LDA. As long as you get along safely, that's what matters. OBJ is the objective. I mean, I'm not trying to insult your intelligence. I just know that this is new to a lot of people, so I put it up there. And that's just what your objective is, where you're going for your mission. Right? So where you're going to assault, or what you're reconning, that's your objective. CCP is a casualty collection point. It's typically an area where you bring your casualties, it's exactly what it sounds like, where you bring your casualties together so that you can triage them, so that you can give care all in one area, and usually it's near an LZ or something for the dust off to come get them. EPW is an enemy prisoner of war. So when we talk about searching EPWs, that's who they are. MET-TC. So you're going to hear the term, oh, it's all MET-TC dependent. And what that means, MET-TC stands for mission, enemy, terrain, time, troops, and civilian considerations. So when you say the way that we're going to flank either right or left is MET-TC dependent, it really does depend on all those elements. So you have to take in consideration your mission. Is your mission to not be seen? If so, you might want to flank left because there's more concealment on the left. Enemy, are they sleeping on that side and I can get surprised if I flank that way? How many of them are there? Where are they located? That sort of thing. Terrain, what kind of avenues of approach you can use? Key terrain, hills, mountaintops. With the example of flanking, terrain's a perfect example of the concealment. Okay, we definitely got more cover and concealment if we move to the right. Time, I mean, how much time do you have to get this done? Does it need to be done right now, or can you maybe spend more time going out and around and flanking from the back because you'll have more of an element of surprise, or do you not have that kind of time to move? You also have to consider your troops. How many do you have? Are they exhausted? Are they going to be able to walk that extra click and a half to go around? Is it going to make that big of a difference? And civilian considerations. That might be if you're assaulting an objective and there's a hospital on one side of it, maybe you want to position yourself to where you're not firing at the hospital. So those are all just pretty specific examples, but you'll hear that a lot. And in fact, you're going to ask me questions and say, well, what would you do here? And I'm going to say, well, it's MET-TC dependent. So part of that is just using your sound judgment and taking all those elements into consideration, because all of those play a factor in your mission accomplishment. LOA is a limit of advance. That's another one people just like to throw out and they don't know what it means. They're just like, LOA, LOA, LOA. And that is just a point that you set that you're not going to cross beyond. So, and you can set it for what you want it to be. So once you cross the objective, I want you to go 25 meters past where you see the last EPW. It can be something like that. And it's just so that everybody knows that that's where you're stopping, so that you don't stop here and then I keep running another 15 meters. 5-point contingency plan, also known as a GOTWA. I have it written out there. I find that when I'm briefing it, if I actually use GOTWA to lead me along, it's very helpful, because when you're briefing this, you're getting nervous and, Brown's evaluating me and she's going to give me an N for sure. So if you go at it that way, you say GOTWA, okay, G, where are you going? I'm going on a recon, as I'm taking with me. I'm taking 6 personnel. I'm taking Venez, Miller, Brown, Tillman, others you're taking with you. Time, you will be back. I'm going to be gone for 20 minutes, so at 14:20, I'll be back. Okay. Time, as you were, what to do if you don't return. If I'm not back in that time limit, I want you to call to hire and stay put at the ORP and wait for further guidance. Action is take under fire. So if you come under fire, we are going to be bound back to you. And if we come under fire, you're going to bound up to us. So you just give them, and there's no right or wrong answer for that. It's going to be MET-TC dependency. See how that works out? So it depends on whether you're leaving a few people here and taking the bulk of them up. That'll change it. So those are what those abbreviations are. So that's going to kind of help you. And there's a couple more, as I found out throughout the day. If I throw something out, please ask me and I'll let you know what it is. Your TLPs for sticks, you're still following that procedure of receiving the order, issuing a warno, making a tentative plan. You're doing all those steps. But what we've developed is a little bit more specific, and it's almost, like I like to call it, a script to making sure that you're doing everything that you need to do to accomplish your mission in an effective manner. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to show up with a well-prepared op order shelf. And have you guys gone over that in class yet? I know Kat Mixon had prepared one.
It's always going to go print it out.
Okay, all right. So, and that's a great start, that one, because it's pretty basic, but it's got everything you need on there. So you show up with a well-prepared op order, ready to take notes, all right? You take everything down, and you guys are going to spend endless time on these op orders, learning how to take it from the platoon level and break it down to the squad level. And you'll be able to pick out information because that op order will tell you everything you need, right? And then you'll have a time to ask questions right afterwards if you missed anything, or if you just need clarification, whatever it may be. After you ask questions, the first thing you're going to do is request security. Typically, when we do these lanes, we'll usually tell you that 3rd Squad is in reserve, or anything else, and that's why I say it's important to pay attention, because what'll happen sometimes is you'll get so caught up in it, you're like, request 3rd Squad for security. Well, didn't you listen to the op order? 3rd Squad has something to do. They're not available to pull security. So usually, then especially at the beginning, we're trying to get you guys to learn and understand the process. So we'll usually give you security. All right. So they'll give you 360 security, and that allows you to bring your teams in for rehearsals. And that's going to be the team and the squad level. So you request security, and then you're going to issue your WARNO. And that's going to be to your team leaders. So you bring your team leaders in. There's nothing specifically that says your WARNO must contain this, can't contain that. But you definitely want to give them the mission, and you definitely want to tell them what their team is going to be in charge of. I like to use these cards so that I can, and I'm sure you've seen people do this, so I can say, hey, Alpha Team Leader, you got Pace and Compass, Ada Litter, and Cobb Mob. Bravo Team, you've got EPW, LDA, and Demo. Our mission is to conduct a point ambush. You want to give a time and a place for the brief, for your op order brief. So you say, I will be giving my op order brief right here at the sand table in 7 minutes, which is 13:30. I want you to be back with your teams in there. Until then, you're going to conduct rehearsals. Bravo Team, we're doing a point ambush, so I need your demo team to go ahead and look over that Claymore. Alpha Team, I need you to go over Cobb Mob because the op order said there's probably going to be some civilians. Any questions? And then you can give them as much information as you want. You can give them challenging passwords, whatever you'd like. Just make sure that you do give them a WARNO and you let them know what time they're going to need to be back. After you issue the WARNO, you're going to finish preparing your op order, plot your distance and direction, and your reporter or your RTO will help you with this. You'll prepare your sand table, and then you'll issue your 5-paragraph op order. I would take that time as well to look through and make sure you've got all your blanks filled in and that sort of thing, because you don't want to be up there briefing and then realize that you left something blank or that you couldn't read your writing because you were scribbling so fast. When you do your op order, when you get to paragraph 3, you're going to ask them to put their pen and paper down, and you're going to brief your scheme of maneuver, which is your sand table. And this is where you're painting the picture for them. This is where you make your money. So, and we're going to go over that for the point ambush briefing. After you issue your op order, it's time for rehearsals. And the first thing you want to do is do the ORP to the objective, because that's the most important thing. That way, if your timeline gets moved up and you need to LD early, you've practiced the most important thing and they know what they're doing for their mission. After that, you can do full rehearsals, LD to the objective, and then silent rehearsals, LD to the objective, and then you can practice contingencies. Indirect fire, direct fire, whatever it may be. And what I like to do, I always like to do something specific to my mission. So if I'm doing a recon, I might have them practice individual movement techniques or have them put on face paint. For point ambush, you want to pull that Claymore out. And if I say, man, Jenkins is going to be my guy that puts the Claymore because he's the only one who knows how to do it, and he's going to be awesome at it. If I hear that as your TAC, and this is for real world as well, what if Jenkins gets shot on the way? Now nobody else knows how to employ that Claymore? That's the wrong answer. So that's why it's important to do a rehearsal like that. You want a PCC and PCIA. You want to make sure that you don't show up and you don't have the placard, and now you can't use the Claymore. And then you're going to conduct PCCs and PCIs not only on your equipment but on your personnel. Make sure that they've got everything that they need. Make sure that they have water. And this is important in real world. You know, it's not just so that you're checking a block that I conducted PCCs, PCIs. No, I mean, you're making sure that they actually have water. Because I know we get in the habit, we're like, oh, okay, yeah, you're good. But it's like, wait, she doesn't have any water in there. And now, if it's a real world patrol and you're out there for hours and hours and she didn't have any water when she could have topped off at the alfalfa, see, so it's an easy fix. We get so caught up in doing the ROTC thing that we start to forget about the bigger picture of why you do these things. So it's going to become repetitive, but then when you become an officer and you're doing whatever it is you're doing in your job, you're going to be so used to doing it, it's going to be second nature, and everything's always going to be squared away for you. And then you'll LD, and you want to make sure that you LD on time, because there's other things going on. You're not the only person conducting a mission at that time. You've got, you know, the guys to your left are doing a point ambush over here, and so are the guys to your right. Well, if you leave early and you set up that ambush first, these other guys are screwed, you know? Same way if you're late. So that's the importance of being on time. And then everything, all the battle drills are pretty much the same from the LD to the ORP, and that's where they get changed and get a little bit different. If you guys have any questions on the TLPs or any of the stuff we just talked about. This was going to be a little bit longer than your other ones are going to be about 45 minutes. So because we just want to spend that first time kind of getting everybody on the same page. So now we're going to talk specifically about point ambush. So I've got some of the key elements up there, and we're going to go over that first just to kind of get you in the mindset, and then we'll go step by step all the way through. So the biggest thing with a point ambush is the element of surprise, all right? We could just call it a surprise attack, but it doesn't sound really tactical, so we call it a point ambush instead. But that's really what you're doing, all right? So you want to keep that element because that's what's giving you the upper hand. And then setting up your claymore properly. You guys are going to get a full class on the claymore in a couple of weeks at lab. And like we talked about, it's always really important to conduct those PCCs before you LD. I've definitely been there when somebody didn't have the placard. And they're like, well, can we just fake use it? No, because you're not going to be able to fake use it in the real world. No. Who can tell me the difference between cover and concealment? You guys know? No? Okay. That's fine. Cover is something that protects you from direct or indirect fire, so like being in a bunker is cover. And concealment is something that keeps you from being seen. So like if you're laying in tall grass, they can't see you, but you can still get shot. So some people use them interchangeably, but they're different things. So just keep that in mind. You can be concealed but not covered. You can be covered and not concealed. So ideally you want to have both in this situation, but you may not be able to get cover if you're in a more open area, but you still want to try and get concealment of your personnel and of your claymore. You want to follow your TLPs as usual. You know, this is still a battle drill, so you're still doing all those steps, issuing your warning, you're still doing rehearsals, everything, and that's going to keep you on track to make sure that you do it properly. Now, reports. One of the important reports is calling up ambush set. I was talking to an infantry buddy of mine last night, telling him I was going to teach this class, and he was saying that in real life, he probably wouldn't call up ambush set, you know, because he said, well, you wouldn't want to open the communications. But for our purposes, because for us, what that means here is we'll let the OP4 come. But pay attention to those reports. They will tell you exactly what they want you to report. And if they say to send something up in a salute format, don't just send it up. Put it in a salute format. And pay attention to the PIRs that you get briefed as well. Sometimes they'll put something in there like currency or direction of travel. And if you call me up and give me a sit rep and a salute, but you don't tell me what direction of travel, well, you haven't completed the mission. Right? So security, because you're on an LDA, you want to make sure that you have good security. And you're going to set a left side and a right side security. Those are going to be the first ones you set. They'll serve as your left and right limits, and they're also going to be the last ones to withdraw. So we'll talk more about that. You want to make sure that you get off the objective quickly. You're standing on a freaking road, all right? So set yourself a time limit, brief it, whatever you want it to be. Hey, I want to be off that objective in 5 minutes. PFC Snuffy, once we get there, you're starting a timer, you tell me when we hit 5 minutes and we're gone. Because as the squad leader, you're going to have so many other things going on. You're still going to look at the time, but you may forget. So make sure you have someone else doing that. And then you should always have a primary and a backup method of initiating the attack. And that's with everything. You always need contingencies. So typically, our primary method is the claymore. We're teaching you guys that the secondary method is to use a frag grenade. You don't want to use an AT-4. It's not meant to be fired at personnel. You really use that like on vehicles, and there will be a place for it in this battle drill, and I'll talk more about that when we set it up. So let's say you're on the Fall FTX, or you're in a real-world mission where you don't have a claymore or a frag grenade. You still need to have a way to initiate fire, and it can be whatever you want it to be. You can say, hey, when I blow my whistle, everybody start firing. Or, I'm going to initiate fire as soon as you hear me shoot, you start shooting as well. Whatever it is, make sure you brief them, make sure everybody knows the method, and that you have a backup method. And as a squad leader, you're responsible for setting up the claymore and checking the positions of your personnel. The way that I'm going to teach you how to do this, you're going to delegate to your team leaders, and your Bravo team leader is going to set up your claymore, and your team leaders are going to set your people in place. That's fine. You just need to go behind and check that claymore and check that the personnel are set and concealed. You're like, oh, but Cadet Brown set my claymore. She's a rock star. I know she did it right. I don't need to check. I don't need to verify it. Well, yes, you do, because if something goes wrong there, that's on you. You know, you're the squad leader. This is your mission. Ultimately, you're responsible for everything that happens. So, you want to check your people to make sure that they're spaced far enough apart and that they're concealed properly. And finally, you want to find the ideal location for your kill zone, because sometimes when you're walking on your azimuth, it's going to take you right up to your objective. Sometimes you kind of get off course, and you start kind of fading this way, and now all of a sudden you're on a different road, and you're setting up an ambush on the wrong road. So that's where your map recon comes into place. You need to really make sure that you're going to the right place. But sometimes, even if you come straight up and you're exactly where the objective is, if you walk 50 meters west, there might be more concealment. You know, this might be a big open field where there's nowhere for you to be concealed, and if you walk just, 20, 30 meters the other way, you'd find a lot of concealment. So don't just, hey, diddle-diddle, right up the middle, yep, we found it, this is where we're going to set up. Do a small recon and check for the best location. And oftentimes you will find something better, 30 meters up the road. So just keep that in mind. All right? Any questions so far? Good? We're not going too fast? Okay. So with every TMK or sand table, depending on what you're calling it, you always want to orient it properly. Right? So you're always going to pull out your compass and you're going to say, yep, north is in this direction. And you put it down. And that just lets people know that this is oriented properly. So if my LD, if I'm supposed to be going that way when I leave, my TMK should not be oriented this way. It needs to be oriented in the direction of your travel. The reason being that it's very easy to mess that up. If you think it's arbitrary and you're like, no, it's fine, I'm just going to set it up here, I know we're going that way, and you start doing rehearsals this way, when it comes time to cross the LD, it's very easy to forget and go the wrong direction, and then you're done. All right? So north seeking arrow. We start out in the alpha. And we're getting ready to cross the LD. All right, we've done all our rehearsals, we've done our PCCs and PCIs, and we are formed up, ready to go. Call it to hire, request permission to cross the LD. All right, you're going to give them a report of your personnel you're taking with you, the number of weapons, specialty equipment, all that good stuff. Once you're given permission to cross the LD, you should call up to your left and right units and let them know that you're moving out, just so that they're aware that you're moving in their AO. This is where you're going to brief FUM T2, right? And that's what I was talking about earlier. So your formation, you're going to say it. You're moving out in a squad column, fire team wedge, order of movement, alpha team in the front, bravo team in the rear with myself in the center for command and control, and traveling technique. We'll be traveling overwatch. All right? So when you cross the LD, the first thing you're going to come to is about either 50 to 100 meters in, depending, MET-TC dependent. Told you it was coming back. Hot. You're going to do a SEALs halt. Stop, look, listen, and smell. This is the hand and arm signal for it that we're using, where you're kind of cupping the ear. Typically, you'll take your headgear off, look around, get acclimated. Once you're happy with that, as a squad leader, you put your headgear back on, give the hand and arm signals for everyone to get up, and continue to move. You'll move forward, and you'll set up your first en route rally point. How far apart they are and how many you use is up to you, and the terrain will dictate it as well. I would say you should always set up at least one, even if it's a very short lane. like we talked about, the purposes of it is for you to be able to fall back. If you got a longer lane, do them every 50 meters, do them every 100 meters, whatever you're comfortable with. And when you set up a rally point, you're going to take your non-firing hand, and you're going to do the hand and arm signal, which is move your arm in a circle, and then point it at whatever it is you're making your rally point. Don't pick a pine tree in the middle of a pine forest, all right, because this needs to be something distinguishable. Because when you're taking that indirect fire, you're trying to fall back, you're not going to look for that one tree, all right. It's a little bit hard to do at Fort Gordon, I understand that, but try and find the fallen log, try and find the tree that still has some pink tape marked on it or something. You also want to mark it off as you pass it at about a 45-degree angle so that you can recognize it when you're bounding back from this direction as opposed to this one. The other important thing about rally points is that you want to pass it back as you pass it. Because once you start getting a lot of people, if my pace and compass guy does the hand and arm signal here, and then everyone does it all the way at the same time, the person in the back of Bravo team thinks that the rally point is here. And that, when you start getting into platoons and things like that, that's a huge difference. You can be 100 meters away from that person. So do it after you cross it. Continue moving forward, set up another en route rally point. Okay? Next thing you're going to set up is your objective rally point. For point ambush, I like to do it anywhere from about 75 to 100 meters from there. Once again, MET-DC dependent. What you need to keep in mind is that you're going to be traveling back and forth to that ORP. So sometimes, bless you, sometimes you'll set it, oh, I want it 200 meters away because I want to make sure I'm far enough away. Keep in mind, you're going to walk forward 200 meters, and then you're going to go 50, then you're going to conduct a recon, however long, and then you're going to set people up going 50, 50, 50, and then you'll have to come back 200 to pick people up, and go back 200. That takes a while. So just keep that in mind as you're setting it up. Like I said, anywhere from 75 to 100 should be about spot on. All right. At your ORP, you can either take it by recon or take it by force. Typically here, we teach you guys to brief, we're going to take the ORP by force. All that means is that's kind of like the stance that you're in when you go in there. Because when you do it by recon, what you do is you take a halt and you send a couple of personnel up to recon the area, and what they're checking for IEDs, they're checking to see if there's any enemy personnel lying in wait that you can't see. And it doesn't really make sense because we're always at Fort Gordon or at Forest Hills and you're like, I can see it, there's no enemy there. But that will happen if you're changing terrain, if there's more relief. So that they would clear it, and then everyone else would move in. But like I said, we usually take it by force, which means we're taking it. This is our area, and your head's kind of on a swivel as you're going in, making sure that there's no IEDs or anything like that. All right. So once you get into the ORP, and you decide, this is where I like it, that's the other thing. It's just like the road. You don't need to set it like, oh, squad leader, we've hit 200 meters, ORP. Take a halt, have him call you up. This is where he's calling up the squad leader. Go up there and he said, hey, we've reached 200 meters. Do you want to set our ORP up here? Actually, there's an area over there with a lot more concealment, about 30 meters to the west, so we're going to go that way. Perfect. That's what you should do. All right. Once you get into the ORP, a lot of times, I think, like in the other classes, they may have briefed you that as soon as you get in there, the people going on the recon come into the center. The problem that I have with that is that for this, you're going to take 7 people with you. So it's going to look like a big gaggle with 7 people there in the middle, and then you're trying to brief the alpha team leader, and you don't have any security. So when you set up that ORP, you set up full 360 security before anybody else moves. And I know you guys have probably heard the term, the 3 to 9 by way of 12. What that means is 12 o'clock is your direction of travel. You got 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock, just like on the face of a clock. So when you say, Alpha Team, I want you to take security from 3 to 9 by way of 12, that's what you're talking about. And you don't have to say that. That's one way that we say it here because we like to sound cool. You can say Alpha, you're going to take front security, Bravo, you're going to take rear. Whatever you're comfortable with. All right, but that just gives them, that tells them exactly where you want them. All right, so they're going to get in 360 security. For the purposes of this brief, my green guys are my Alpha Team. My blue is my Bravo. And as the squad leader, I'm red. I found him in LDEC, so I brought him home with me. All right, we've got full 360 security. At this point, I would brief my Alpha Team leader my 5-point contingency plan. What I like to do, when I brief my SAN table, when I'm giving my full op order, this is what I would say. At this point, I'm going to leave my Alpha team leader with a 5-point contingency plan, which I'm going to brief during rehearsals, and then move on. When we do our first rehearsal, I will brief that full 5-point contingency plan at that point. That way, when you actually go out on mission, and it's time to do it,